I can't believe it. How could my dear Mullen die and leave us all alone? His brother Chilean just died too. Father Elimelech passed away a few years ago. To make matters worse, neither Orpah nor I ever had a baby. How will we ever survive? One day when Mother came home from market, she told Orpah and me that she had learned that the famine had finally passed in Bethlehem, her hometown. She made it clear she expected us to go with her. Of course, that's normal since we're part of the family, but it'll be hard to leave Moab, our families, and everything we know, to live as strangers in a strange land with strange customs. I remember when the Elimelech family moved to Moab. They had such a strong Hebrew accent, I could hardly understand them. I'm ashamed to admit it now, but sometimes when I was with my girlfriends, I made fun of the way they talked. Of course, that's before I knew Mullen. I was shocked the family moved to Moab in the first place. Our country has a poor reputation of helping foreigners when they're hungry or in need. Also, it wasn't that long ago that our countries were at war with each other. Must have been pretty awful over in Israel for them to move to Moab. I wonder what Bethlehem will be like. After Mullen and I married and I moved into their home, I could see they lived very differently than us Moabites. Every Shabbat, they worshiped God, they had family time, and they didn't work at all. They prayed, sang songs about their God, and told stories of how God had worked in the past. I wondered how they got all their work done. But after a day of rest, we had more energy and could work more efficiently. Shabbat, I love it. One of the stories Mother told was about Abraham offering to let Lot choose a part of the country he wanted to live in. She said that demonstrated hesed, sacrificial love on behalf of another. What a strange, unnatural, yet beautiful way to live. I was hooked. I want to be someone who demonstrates hesed to those around me. Their God was nice too, not like Chemosh, our God. If something bad happens to us, Chemosh demands a sacrifice. I remember when my sister's husband died. The priest demanded her son be killed to appease Chemosh. It wasn't enough that her husband died. No, they demanded her sweet baby too. After her only child was killed, my sister was never the same again. What an awful God. I hate Chemosh. Mother Orpah and I started going through our things, preparing to move to Bethlehem. We sold the valuables, packed what we could, and then waited for the next caravan heading west. One day word came that we were to meet at the city gate at dawn the next day. I slept poorly that night. My stomach churned. What was it going to be like to live in Israel? Would they accept me? Would they make fun of the way I talked? At least I'd have Orpah with me. Long before the rooster crowed, Mother Orpah and I were up. We stuffed the last few things into our heavy bags, picked them up, and wobbled toward the city gates. Suddenly, Mother stopped. She looked first at Orpah and then at me. It isn't right for me to ask you to go to Israel with me. I'm sorry I insisted. It's just, well, I just didn't want to go by myself. You're Moabites. Israel is no place for you. Go back home to your mother's homes. May God reveal his hesed, his sacrificial love for you. May you find new husbands and live full and happy lives. After kissing us, she turned to go. Orpah and I just stood there stunned. Then we started wailing and crying out, "No, don't leave us, we're going with you." It's like Mother didn't hear us. God has slain first my husband and now my sons. I have nothing further to give you. You have a life here, not in Israel. I was horrified by her picture of God. It was only Yahweh who was helping me get through the horror of losing my husband. The pain and grief of losing her sons must have clouded her thinking. Orpah's face lit up. She looked at me and motioned toward our parents' homes. But I couldn't let Mother travel all that way by herself. She needed me, and I needed her and her God. I shook my head. Orpah turned and left. She looked back only once, then she was gone. I guess Orpah won't be going with us after all. Look, Orpah has made a good choice. She will live with her people and worship their gods. Go. My mouth went dry. Worship Chemosh? After learning about the good God of Abraham, she was asking me to worship the baby killer? Really? Even though Mother said God was against her, I knew Yahweh was kind and good and gracious. I couldn't just walk away from him. I cried out, "Stop pushing me away, insisting I stop following you. Wherever you go, I'll go. Wherever you live, I'll live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I'll die and be buried there with you. May God bring terrible curses on me if anything except death comes between us." Mother saw I was determined to go with her. She picked up her pack, and we headed to the city gates in silence. I wondered if she was upset with me, but that didn't matter. She needed me, and I was going with her. We traveled from the Moabite plateau down to the Jordan Valley. I found that riding an animal for hours on end didn't sit very well with me, if you know what I mean. Sometimes I got off and walked. Finally, we crossed the Jordan River and entered the land of Israel. We passed the ruins of Jericho, just a couple miles from the Jordan River. Once again, Mother shared the story of Rahab, the Canaanite prostitute who trusted God, and how the walls of Jericho came crashing down. What an amazing, good, powerful God Yahweh is. I'm so glad I chose him as my God. I looked up at the distant hills. We had to climb those steep hills to reach Bethlehem. As we climbed, I admired the little yellow wildflowers growing beside the road. They were so pretty. Later, as we were getting closer to Bethlehem, I saw the barley fields with their reapers. I was excited, yet nervous. Would they accept me, a foreigner? Finally, we arrived in Bethlehem, rumpled and saddle sore. People were streaming out the gates. We learned that the wife of Boaz, whoever that was, had just died, and they were preparing to bury her. Soon the whole village knew that Mother had returned. They crowded around her saying, "Naomi, is that really you? Where's Elimelech? What about your boys?" At this, Mother shook her head and cried, "Don't ever call me Naomi again. That name no longer fits. Life is not pleasant. In fact, it's downright ugly. Call me Mara, which means bitter. God has treated me bitterly and has made me bitter. My husband is no more. My boys are no more. I'm all alone now." I felt invisible to Mother. Yet all the women were staring at me. I felt my cheeks flush. Was Mother ashamed of me? Is that why she told us to stay in Moab? Had I made a big mistake? Mother's best friend insisted we stay with them until we could get the Elimelech home fixed up and ready to live in. Soon we had our own place. Mother's health wasn't very good. I was going to have to try and support us. As we came into Bethlehem, I had seen the barley fields with their reapers. In front, there were the men cutting the stalks of grain, and then the women picking up the grain for the owner. But behind them, there were some women and children. When I asked what they were doing, Mother shared about the gracious laws given by Yahweh to care for the poor and foreigners. They were allowed to glean along the edges of the field and to follow the reapers and pick up any grain they dropped. I was blown away. Surely Yahweh loves everyone and not just his own people. I was both poor and a foreigner. So one evening I said, "Let me go out to the barley fields and pick up whatever grain is left behind the reapers." "You may go, my dear." At dawn, I slowly walked out of town toward the barley fields. I knew the dangers for young women, especially women without a husband or father. But I mustn't allow fear to control me. If I didn't work, we wouldn't eat. It was as simple as that. As I approached the first field, I noticed a man there who was obviously in charge. Please, sir, may I follow your reapers and pick up the grain they've dropped? You aren't from around here, are you? No, I recently arrived from Moab with Naomi. Ah, yes, I've heard about you. Yes, you may follow the reapers. My master Boaz is a good man. He follows the laws of Moses, even though others may not. That morning I labored up and down the fields. If the hills weren't so steep, it sure would have been a lot easier. When the sun was high in the sky, I noticed an older man talking to the foreman. They kept looking my way. Finally, he came over. Listen, my daughter. From now on, don't go to any other field. Stay right here in this one. And stay close to my young women. Watch where they're harvesting and stay close to them. And don't worry about a thing. I've given orders to my young men to leave you alone. Oh, and if you're thirsty, feel free to go over there and drink from the water jars that my servants have filled. Obviously, this was Boaz. How can you be so kind to me? You must know I'm only a foreigner without family or protectors. Yes, I know. And I also know how you sacrificed yourself for your mother-in-law after the death of her husband and sons. How you left your father and mother and the land of your birth. How you chose to live among a bunch of total strangers. May the Lord richly bless you since you have placed your trust in him. I was embarrassed. I'd only done my duty. Oh, thank you, sir. You've made me feel better just by speaking gently to me. At mealtime, Boaz called out, Ruth, come over here and eat some of our food. Then he handed me some roasted grain. I ate and ate. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been full. I even had some left over. I stuck it inside my robe for Mother. I knew she'd be hungry. I worked hard all day, and when the evening came and I beat out the grain, I had a full basket. That'd be enough to feed Mother and me for several weeks. What a blessing. When I showed Mother, she was shocked by how much I'd been able to glean. Where did you work today? May the Lord bless the man who helped you. I told her all about Boaz, how he had let me drink from the water for his servants and given me food to eat. Why, God bless that man. That man is a close relative of ours, a kinsman redeemer. And that's not all. Boaz also told me to stay with his workers throughout the whole harvest season, wheat as well as barley. Good. Do as he says, my daughter. You might be harassed in other fields, but you'll be safe with him. I grew strong as I labored up and down the fields and carried the grain home. As I worked, I listened to the girls chatter. Of course, I didn't know any of the people, but it was sure nice to be included. One of the names they mentioned struck me. His name had such a poetic ring to it. Poloni Almoni. Don't you like it? But that seemed to be the only good thing about the man, besides being rich. They said that he was, how do you say it? Stingy, yes. I imagined his poor wife struggling to feed and clothe her family. One day, Mother said to me, my dear, Isn't it time I try to find a husband for you and get you happily married again? The man I'm thinking about is Boaz. He has been so kind to us and is a close relative of Elimelech. But mother, why would a rich man like him be willing to marry me when I'm just a poor foreigner? I've heard the talk in the fields. I know some of the locals don't like foreigners. What you don't know, my dear, is that Boaz is only half Israelite himself. His mother was Rahab, the Canaanite prostitute who demonstrated her faith in God by welcoming the Jewish spies. Later, she married Salmon from the tribe of Judah, and their son was Boaz. I happen to know that Boaz will be winnowing barley out at the threshing floor today. Now do as I say. Bathe, put on some nice clothes, and perfume yourself. Then go down to the threshing floor. Don't let Boaz see you. Notice where he lies down to sleep. Once he's sound asleep, go lift the cover off his feet and lie down. He'll tell you what to do concerning marriage. Mother, you want me to do what? Patiently, she repeated her instructions, adding that when a woman has been widowed, this was how she asked the kinsman redeemer to fulfill his duty and marry her. If you say so, I'll do it. Under my breath, I said, sure sounds risky to me. At dusk, I headed out of town toward the threshing floor. There I found a hiding place where I could see Boaz, but remain unseen. As I watched him, I wondered how Mother knew he'd be down here tonight. Finally, he went off to get some sleep. He lay down at the end of a stack of grain, and soon I could hear him snoring. Quietly, I crept over to Boaz, lifted the cover off his feet, and lay down. I was much too nervous to sleep, so I lay there praying that God's will be done. Boaz was spooked when he woke up and found me at his feet. Who are you? I'm your servant Ruth. Please protect me by marrying me according to God's law. As you know, you're a kinsman redeemer. May the Lord bless you, my daughter, for you are demonstrating Hesed, sacrificial love for Naomi now more than ever. Naturally, you'd prefer a younger man, but you've put aside your own desires. I'll do whatever you say. The whole village knows that you're a good woman. It's true, I'm a close relative. Unfortunately, there's someone closer than me. Stay here tonight. In the morning, if he'll agree to take care of you, very well. But if he refuses, I promise to take care of you myself. Now lie down, but you must leave at first light. No one must note that a woman was here at the threshing floor. There was just a hint of color on the horizon when I got up. Boaz got up too and said, "Bring your cloak over here, please, and spread it out." Then he measured 6 scoops of grain into my cloak. I don't want you to go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Mother was furiously sweeping when I arrived home. When she saw me, she said, "What happened, my daughter?" I told her all about my night. Boaz won't rest until he has settled things today. These kinds of matters are settled at the city gate near the marketplace. Let's go down and do our daily shopping right now. We can watch what happens without it being too obvious." Soon we were headed to the marketplace. As we passed the city gate, I noticed that Boaz was already there. Suddenly, I heard him call out, "Poloni, Almoni, come here, we have some business to discuss." I couldn't breathe. Not stingy Poloni, Almoni. He wasn't our closest relative, was he? In alarm, I looked at Naomi, but her eyes were closed. I could tell she was praying. Boaz asked 10 of the elders from the village to come witness a transaction. After they were seated, he spoke to Poloni Almoni. "The property that belonged to Elimelech, our relative, is being sold by his widow Naomi, who has just returned from the land of Moab." I was shocked. Neither in Moab nor in Israel do women own or sell property. What was Boaz talking about? "I thought you should know. Buy it if you want. You can make it official right now with these elders. But if you don't want it, let me know, because I'm next in line and I'll buy it." I was terrified when I heard Poloni Almoni exclaim, "That's good land. Yes, I do want to buy it." But Boaz wasn't done. "Your purchase of the property requires your marriage to Ruth, the Moabite widow of Mahlon, so that she can have a son to carry on the family name and to inherit the land." With relief, I heard Poloni Almoni exclaim, "Then I can't buy it. That might risk what I could give to my own son. You redeem it." I wondered why Poloni Almoni changed his mind. Was it because I'd have a baby? Wasn't that the point? Did he think he'd have to marry Naomi? She was too old to have a baby. What would that help? Or was it because I was a foreigner? Who knows? Boaz turned to the elders and said, "You are witnesses that today I have purchased from Naomi the property that belonged to Elimelech, and with the land I've acquired Ruth, the Moabite widow of Mahlon, to be my wife. Now she can have a son to carry on the family name and to inherit the land." Townspeople said, "Yes, we are witnesses." Nathan said, May the Lord make your wife be like Rachel and Leah, who bore many children to Jacob. May you become rich and famous in Israel." Then Simeon added, "With the children God gives you from this young woman, may your family rival that of Perez, the son Tamar bore to Judah." That very day, Mother and I moved into the home of Boaz. This was a Levirate marriage, a marriage to a family member of my dead husband, with the express purpose of raising up a son for Mahlon. Because of that, there was no wedding ceremony. The legalities were taken care of at the city gate earlier. That night, before I fell asleep next to my new husband, I thought about the strange blessings given by my new community. What could they mean? Then I realized that Rachel, Leah, and Tamar were all foreigners whom God used to bless God's people. Rachel and Leah were the mothers of all the children of Israel. And Tamar was a mother of our tribe, the tribe of Judah. They were asking God to use me like that in blessing others. I wondered how God could use me. Soon I was with child. After so long without being able to get pregnant, it felt like a miracle. Mother had lost her husband and 2 sons. Now I could give her what she couldn't have without my help. When my baby was born, I presented him to Mother and said, "Here's your new son." I admit it was hard to give my baby away, but it had been conceived with that in mind. The village women said to Mother, "You have a new son. Praise the Lord. May this child give you a new life. May your descendants become famous throughout Israel. Look at your daughter-in-law, Ruth. She loves you and has given you her son. This one devoted daughter is better to you than 7 sons would be." I loved watching Mother rock baby Obed and nuzzle his sweet little cheeks. As I look back, I realize I was assuming that Israelites would be like Moabites. My people didn't welcome foreigners, didn't help them when they were in need. In fact, they took advantage of them when they could. That's why I was so concerned about moving to Israel. I should have known that God's people who truly love and follow God would welcome foreigners. After all, in the 5th book of Moses it says, "You are to love those who are foreigners, for you yourselves were foreigners in the land of Egypt." When God's people truly have said love God, they will obey all that He asks. I'm so glad they love me, even though I came from Moab. God has been so good to me. Once I was a foreigner with nothing. Now I have a family, and I'm part of the family of God.